Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today on this Yevamot Samach test. We're going to begin on Samach test and Aleph about 8 lines from the top. Rabbi Kiva, the Armin inclusion does Rabbi Kiva has a very strict opinion that even if it's a lav, the din is that kedushin is not typhus. So what does he do with kisienel is zar? Says Rashi, Adam posel. Regarding to a person who's possible, it cannot be talking about marriage because he holds it's not kedushin, it's not typhus. Remember, the in bias psul apostle poiselas el b'misha roy lekadesh. The only time a bia of apostle is going to apostle her is only if it's someone who's fit to do kedushin. So in kedushin l'shum apostle, if let's say it's not kedushin, not v'hai kisiel. Im bol lamid albias psuin enu el loshin beila. V'chol zarm etzel b'mashvish nehi b'yasim poselas afil every kachav of eved. So again, we're talking about a situation where you have a woman who has tashmish with a eved or an oven kachavim, where kedushin is not typhus. So over here, he holds that even when it comes to kedushin, when it comes to chavi lav, kedushin is not typhus. So what does he do with the pasuk ki se'el zar? So ki tiboel. It's referring to specifically when you have bia, an almanu grusha kiti boil. So almanu grusha lamli, almanu hachmer leha. So when it comes to a widow, it's to be strict. With kids, she's fit for kahuna, but no truma. Ugrusha lahakel leha. When it comes to a divorcee, it's to be lenient, to eat truma without kids. Almanahu dechi uleisli zera. When on almana, in the situation where she does not have children, achla, she can eat truma mishum dechazu kahuna, because she's fit to marry a kohen. Abul gerusha, when it comes to gerusha loichazu kahuna, where she's not fit to marry a kohen, and kohen cannot marry gerusha. Ema afgav the leisli zera lo achla. You would think even without children she could not eat truma. Maybe the reason why Gerusha, when she has children, she cannot eat mishum dolei chaza kahuna, because we're more strict by Gerusha. When it comes to Almana who could marry Kohen, you would think even if there is children, that she would be able to eat sricha. That's why we mention both of these cases. So Rashi says, Almanu Grusha Lashmin and Oibkacham Eved Lomli. Okay, so we saw that. Weiter. So the Amo, why don't we say Nivala Lupasala Af Maxa Grushasai? So if we're saying in fact that there's the potential of apostling through Bia, even by Chavi Lavin, so why don't we say the same thing when it comes to Maxa Grushasai? So if a person would remarry his wife, says Rashi, Mishin Nises La'acher, she married someone in the middle. The Hazarhu Etzla, Vatafsi Loi Bas Kedushin. It's the Kedushin is typhus. So the question is, L'chayra, says Rashi, he kasher b'yelda kasher, v'okmeina kasher l'kahuna v'koshkin l'truma. So the question is, why is she kasher l'chayra according to Rabbi Kiva? This shouldn't work. Where says like this: L'Ish Zar Amrachmanam Mish Zar Etzel Mikara. It's only someone who is zar from the beginning, someone who is removed to be able to eat truma. That is what the pasuk is coming to tell you. Afuke hai, excluding this person who's a max krishaso, zar etzla mikarahu. This is not someone who is a zar mikara, because originally he was allowed to marry her. Only later on, as a technicality, he's not allowed to marry his wife. So therefore, we will not include Max Grushaso to passel the truma. The only one who will passel the truma is someone who's a zar miyikara. Yihachi chol the lav zar hu miyikara will lifsol. We know that a chol will passel her from eating truma. But we should say the same thing, that when it comes to a chol, originally she was not profane. He was not a chol. So why all of a sudden does that change? So Amar Kra lo yichalil zara ba'ama. The kohen should not profane his children. So Makash zaro lo. We make a connection, the child to him. Mahu poisel avzara nami poisel. Just like he himself is posel, so too the children. Ve'ema meshas havoya. Maybe it's at the time of the kedushin. So the kohen gadol ba'almana. Ma kohen gadol ba'almana b'bia av hainami b'bia. The whole isser takes place of being a chol is dafka at bia, not at the kedushin. Ve'ema ad ika havoyu bia. Maybe you need both. No, the kohen gadol ba'almana. Ma kohen gadol ba'almana b'bia l'chuda av hainami b'bia l'chuda. It's just the bia itself when it comes to the relationship of an almana to a kohen gadol. That element is dafka b'bia. So too when it comes to this. Rav Yosi Oimer Kol Shazar Paisel Kol Shein Zar Pasul Enu Paisel. So he said, what is the deterrent to make her apostle? Or it depends on this. If the children are apostle, then it'll also apostle. If the children are not going to become apostle, then with the next generation, then this generation they will not apostle. So Ma'i Kabein Tanakam Rav Yosi. So Rav Yochanan Mitzri Sheni V'Yadayim Sheni Ikabenayu. What is this? So a Mitzri Sheni. The pasuk says in Rashi that having bia with a Mitzri Sheni is usher. The Chsiv Shlishi V'Lo Sheni. You can only the third generation of an Egyptian can come to Kal Hashem, which is the diak is not the second. So what do we see? That in this situation, says Rashi, Mitzri Sheni, Pasul v'zar kosher. Over here, that person is pasul, but the child is kosher. V'achinami tanan b'habal yevimto, this armul and this garshu, min ersin psulus min ersin ksherus. Okay, so the point is that we see that this is a distinction. That the only time it'll pasul is if it's going to pasul the child. So in this situation, if you have bia with a mitzri sheni, it's not going to pasul the child, and because that child's already going to be a mitzri shlishi. V'shneimu amdua ela mikoin gadol ba'almana. Not tanakama savar ma koin gadol ba'almana should be yasu ba'aveira. Because it's a bia, which is incorrect, because it's a kedusha, it's a chavilavin upoisel, therefore it'll pasul. Sav hainami poisel. So too, it's the same thing. It'll pasul. Rav Yosi savar no kekoin gadol. Ma koin gadol shazar pasul poisel. Am kol shazar pasul poisel. That it'll pasul the child. The child will become a chol, and therefore it'll pasul her as well. Lafuki mitzri sheni she'ein zar apostle. So the child is not apostle, and therefore it's not going to apostle the woman either. Okay. All right, let's see a couple of questions. Question 11. Elu biyais she'ein aver midaraisa. V'afil hachi enu poisel s'kuhuna. It will not apostle the kuhuna. V'chad me'an de'omer. So the answer is a mitzri, or a daimi sheni, or as we're going to see, a ger from a moini Moavi. Also, when it comes to a ger a moini Moavi, we're going to see, because the whole issue is like we see by Rus, who the whole issue of lo yavo and moini Moavi b'kal Hashem, as we're going to see, is dafka a Jewish woman with an Amoini man, but like Rus, a Jewish man with a Amoini, a Moavi woman is allowed. So therefore, it will not pasul all of the children, because only a male is pasul, but a female will not be pasul. Okay, we're going to end up seeing that. TA 22. Rav Yosi Savar Kol Shazar Apostle Poisel Shavil Omer Kol Shiatanais Bito Atanais El Manaso. Let's continue. Let's see the rest of this piece. Shavil Omer Kol Shiatanais Bito. Anytime that the daughter can get married, Atanais El Manaso, you can marry the widow, etc. No Ma'ika being Rav Yosi or Shem Gamliel, because it's the same thing, meaning the child is kosher, so then she's kosher too. So Amar Ula Ger Amoni Moavi Ika Benayu. So the difference has to do with the Ger Amoni Moavi, as we said. Rabbi Yosi Savar Ma Kohen Gadol Ba'almana Shazar Apostle Poisel Av Kol Shazar Apostle Poisel. It'll pasul it'll possible because a kohen gadol to almana, the child will be a chol. So too in this situation, because it's the potential of some child, some offspring becoming puzzle, so therefore it'll puzzle her as well. Hashem will ever know. Ma kohen gadol almana shekoil zara puzzle paisel. Afshekol zara puzzle paisel. The only time is if, regardless of boy or girl, that child will become puzzle. Afuke. Amoni Moavi the in kol zar apostle. The Amar Amoni v'la Amonis Moavi v'la Moavi. So since when it comes to Ger Amoni Moavi, since he doesn't disqualify all of his children, so his wife is also not disqualified. Okay, again, obviously it's machlokas, and that now we can understand the rest of question 11 and also TA22. TA22 presumably says the same thing. Rav Yosi Mitzri v'Adai Misheni Hashem Gamil Amoini Umoavi. Okay. Okay, right. Let's see the next Mishnah. Ha'oinis of a mafata. So a person either raped or seduced a woman. Vashoita, or the person was incompetent. Lo poison v'loy machilon. That bia will not passel her, but also will not allow her to eat truma. So what is this? Vashaita afil ali de chuppah, the kedushin. Even if, let's say, a shaita actually had a regular marriage, lo poisel, it will not passel this woman. In other words, let's say, for example, she's a bas kohen. So it's not going to passel her, she could still eat truma. Voy machal. But if she'll say she's a bas Yisrael, she's not, and he's a kohen, the kohen's a shaita, she can't eat truma, the in kinyan or kinyan, because it's not a kinyan. So that makes sense by there. Hare elu, fine. So v'im einon ruin lovo b'Yisrael. Let's say the man is not fit to come into Klal Yisrael. Again, he's a mamzer, let's say, and he has relations with this woman. Hari elu poislin. So then, in that case, the children will become posel. Shahari nischalu bebias posel, because she became a chalala through the bia of this man. So she's posel to marry Kayin, because she has like the din of a chalala. So ketzad. Hare Yisrael Shabal Bas Yisrael. So you have Yisrael who had tashmish with a daughter of a Kayin, Yisrael Shabal Bas Kayin. Toich b'truma. We say that she can still continue truma. Why? So this is Rashi says it was ba'oinis obapitoi shol shem kedushin. So if you're ma'anis mafata, that's the reason why. If it's shol shem ishus, and she's a Kohen, daughter of a Kohen, so that bia meant nothing, and therefore she can continue to eat truma because she's connected to her father's home. However, as we continue to Samech Tes Amid Beis, let's say through being Aynis Mafata, Ibra, she becomes pregnant, at that point, even though she's a Bas Kohen, she can no longer eat truma because now she's linked to this man who is a Yisrael. Nechtach ha'uber b'meyeha teichel. Let's say the child dies tragically, so then she can resume to eat truma. Says Rashi, miyad v'hu adin nami im yoladaso umes. It's the same thing. And let's say she gave birth, but then the child died. So therefore, at that point now she's no longer connected to this man she had bia with, and therefore she's able to go back to her father's house and eat truma. Hayakayin shabal bas Yisrael. So let's say you have a kohen who has tashmish with a bas Yisrael. So lo teicha b'truma. So even though you would say, well, now since she's connected to this kohen, maybe she could eat truma. No, she's still not to eat truma. However, Ibra, what happens if she's pregnant? Also lo teichel. She's not allowed to eat. Why? Sha'uber, says Rashi, enu meichel es imo Yisraelis ad sheitzel avar oilam. The only time this woman could potentially eat truma is once the child's born. As it says, v'yolad beisa yoichel, yolad meichel, sheni yolad enu meichel. So even though this woman's pregnant, it's not going to be enough for her to be able to eat truma. Fine. Ibra lo toichel. Obviously, Yolda, when she gives birth in toichel, she's able to. Now, nimsa koicha shel ben golda mishel av. We therefore find that the koich of her child, because when she's pregnant and has a kid, so at that point now she can eat truma. That's golda mishel av, says Rashi. Shaboyel, that when he had tashmish with her, lo yochel achila, she was still not able to eat. Neshlo bo lehel Hashem kedushin. Lav kinyanahu. Even though this was all done shlo l'shem kedushin, this was l'shem's nus, so the bia will not allow this bas Yisrael to marry to be able to eat truma, even though the man she had bia with is a kohen. But if they have a child together through this relationship, even though it was not properly done, this tashmish, it was not l'shem kedushin, nonetheless she'll be able to eat truma. So we see the koyach of the ben is golda mishalav. Eved poisel mishum bia. An eved could posel because of bia, says Rashi. In bo al kohenes. If let's say an eved has tashmish with a kohen woman, poslim in a truma, that relationship, that tashmish, that bia, will posel the woman from being able to eat truma anymore, even though she's a bas kohen. Doesn't make any difference. So an eved poisel mishum bia, the enu poisel mishum zera, but it's not going to posel when it comes to children, says Rashi. Im yesh la zera, let's say there's children lebas kohen. So this daughter of Yisrael. So let's say she had a child, and she's a bas kohen. She was married. She had tashmish with Yisrael, and now she child. So Yisrael kosher. Shu eved umeis bala Yisrael v'nishar zeh lo amrinan hari zera yesh lo Yisrael. We don't say, oh, she has children, but tosha v'truma savia, and that she can't go back. The eved vade lav zerahu. The fact that this guy was from an eved, that is nothing. That's not zera. Okay. But anyway, having a child through the means of an eved doesn't do anything. That's what, to be able to, as the Gemara says, enu poisel mishum zera. The fact that you have a child, that's not going to posel her from being able to eat truma, even because this child is really nothing. Okay. Teitza, Bas Yisrael Kohen. So you have a Bas Yisrael who has tashmish with a Kohen. Now, at that moment, she's not able to eat truma. Or a Bas Kohen Yisrael. So a Bas Kohen, and she has tashmish with Yisrael. V'yolda himenu bein. They have a kid. Okay, so now they have a son. Now v'holach haben. Let's say the child goes v'nichbash al shivcha. He has relations with a shivcha. V'yolda himenu ben, and they have a child. So, Har is an Eved. This child is an Eved. Why? Because we go busser the woman based on Tiel Edoneha. He should be able to do Tiel Edoneha. That when it comes to a woman, we go busser the woman. So the fact that he had tashmish with the Shimcha, the product of this relationship is an Eved. The Haisa, so that was the child. They have one child, okay? And that child is an Eved. Now, Haisa aim of the Bas Yisrael l'koyin l'toicha b'truma. Now, let's say this. We're talking about the father's mother, the grandmother, was a Bas Yisrael to a koyin l'toicha b'truma. Even though the grandmother was connected to a koyin, and let's say the grandmother's husband died, so the question is, well, if she has a child, so then she can eat truma. But over here, let's say her child died, and all she has left is this grandchild. This grandchild was a product of a relationship between her son and a shivcha, which means the grandchild, is an eved. So that eved does not constitute the right for her to be able to eat truma. So again, normally speaking, what happens is this: if you have a Bas Yisrael who marries a Kohen, and the Kohen dies, obviously she can no longer eat truma. But if she has a child, or she had a child who had a child, and her child died, so she has one grandchild, that also will be enough for her to be able to eat truma, because that grandchild or child is linked to the Kohen. However, in this situation, the only child in question over here is an Eved. So an Eved is not going to be enough of a child enough to be able to allow this woman who's a Bas Yisrael to eat truma. That's what this means. Bas However, the other way around, if let's say it's a Bas Kohen, and she was married to Yisrael, and this grandchild is an Eved, Toicha b'truma, because of her father. What do you mean she has a grandchild? Now that grandchild is a Shivcha, is an Eved. So therefore, that is really not a disqualification in this situation. Or here, it's not going to be enough to be able to cause her to not be able to eat truma, because the only time she would have to stop eating truma is if she actually had a child from Israel, or a grandchild from Israel, but not an Eved. Mamzer, so that's what the case by an Eved. Mamzer, poisel u'meichel. When it comes to a mamzer, it will passel for her to be able to marry a kohen, and also u'meichel. Now, what does that mean? It could passel her from eating truma and also to eat. So ketzad bas Yisrael a kohen. So you have a Bas Yisrael who marries a kohen. So again, normally that means that once they're married, then she can eat truma. Now, who Bas Kohen Yisrael, or for that matter, let's say you have a Bas Kohen who marries Yisrael. V'yoldim and Bas, and now they have a daughter. Okay, this was a perfectly fine relationship. They had a daughter. Now that normally would be enough to qualify or disqualify. V'holcha Bas v'nisis le'eved. But this woman went and married a slave. O oivikachavim. V'yoldim and a ben. So she ended up having a child. So Mishnah says harizeh mamzer. This child is considered to be a mamzer. And the question is, why is it a mamzer? Maybe because of kedushin chadi lavin, which is the child would be a mamzer in this case. So ha'isa aim imo bas Yisrael. Let's say the grandmother. Again, all you have left is this grandchild, and you have a grandmother who's a bas Yisrael kohen, and her husband died. So toicha b'truma, we say that she's allowed to eat truma, even though her grandchild is a mamzer. But a mamzer is enough. It's not like an eved. A mamzer is enough in order for her to be able to eat truma. Well, even though she's a bas Yisrael, but because her grandchild's a mamzer, it works. Because when it says ayin law, so the Gemara says it's even if it's a puzzle. Bas kohen Yisrael will toicha b'truma. However, the other way around, if it's a bas kohen Yisrael will toicha b'truma. Namely, because normally you would think, well, she doesn't have any kids, but she does have a kid. Even though that grandchild's a mamzer, nonetheless, it's enough to say that she can no longer eat truma. Kohen gadol, pamim shu paisel, it depends. Ketzad, bas kohen Yisrael. So again, you have a bas kohen to Yisrael, v'yolda hemenu bas. So they end up having a daughter. Now that daughter, because the husband is Yisrael, so the daughter's Yisrael. V'holcha habas, and then the daughter goes. V'nisas a kohen. And then she marries a kohen. V'yoldahem and a ben. She has a child. Now that child's a kohen. So the grandchild is a kohen, and the son and the daughter is a Yisrael. Harazeh royal kohen gadol. The truth is, this grandchild is fit to become the kohen gadol if he would potentially, because this child, even though his parents were Yisraelim, right? The grandfather is Yisrael, and they had a child, and therefore, which means the child is Yisrael. But it doesn't make any difference that the daughter's Yisrael. But that daughter married a Kohen, so then that child's still a Kohen, even though this daughter is not a Kohen. So how is there really is Kohen Gadol? He can do the avodah on the mizbeach. Machalas imoy. So in that situation, the daughter, the Bas Yisrael, is able to eat truma. She'll be able to eat truma because of the connection to this other child is a kohen. Upaisel aim imoy. However, it can passel the grandmother, who is a bas kohen. So even though if it's a bas Yisrael, she can eat, it'll passel the grandmother. So Yisameris lo kivnei kohen gadol shehu paiseleini min truma. I would rather not have a grandchild who is prominent, because it's possible that it still could be possible from Truma. The Gemara is going to discuss that line. We'll see that at better length on next daf. So Tanino had the Tanabanan Shaita. So what did our Mishnah say? Our Mishnah said when it comes to Einis Mafata or a Shaita for that matter, the din is that even let's say by Shaita, it's they did Kedushin, they did everything, but it's not considered to be a Kinyan, and therefore because of that, will Poison will Machilin. It's not going to passel her if she's a Bas Kayan, and if it's a Bas Yisrael, this relationship it looks like they're married. She won't be able to eat, even though her husband is a Kayan. So what do we see? Let's say you have a shait or a katan that married women and died. So when it comes to the wives, they're pater from everything. And the reason is because it's not a kinyan. It's not marriage. If it was marriage, then we would require yibum, or at very least chalitza. The fact that we don't even require chalitza is clearly because it's nothing. Weiter. Ketzad ha'yisrael ha'ba'abas kayin teichel v'truma ibra lo teichel. So what do we say? Let's go through the Mishnah again. It says that if, let's say, for example, you have a man who is apostle, and a Yisrael who had tashmish with a bas kayin, so we say teichel v'truma. Now in that situation, because it was a bia which was not l'shem ishus, so therefore the din is that she can continue to eat truma because she's a bas kayin. However, when she becomes pregnant already, then we do not allow her to eat truma. So that's again a bas kayin, because it was a bia shelo shem ishus. She is still allowed to eat truma, but if she gets pregnant, then she no longer can. So the Gemara says like this: Ketan ha'yisrael shabal bas kayin teichel b'truma ibro l'teichel. Now kivan the ibro l'teichel. If it's true that in the fact that we see that she's pregnant, she's not allowed to eat truma, so lecha shema ibra. Doesn't make any sense. Why do we say, oh, okay, but otherwise she could eat truma? What do you mean? How do you know that she's not pregnant? Maybe she is pregnant, because if she's pregnant, she's not allowed to eat truma. So then the fact that we know that there was this relationship, shel shem ishus, maybe she got pregnant. So Mila Tanan, we learn that sometimes we wait 3 months because we're concerned of the potential of being pregnant. We're not going to know until after the first trimester. So the question is, if in fact, as we see in the Mishnah, on the top line over here, that Ibro lo teichel b'truma, so we should be chayshish that this woman may be pregnant. So Maramba bar huna yuchsin chashu, truma lo chashu. When it comes to Yochsin, it's true. You're absolutely right. When it comes to Yochsin, we are chayshish that maybe she's pregnant. However, when it comes to eating truma, we're not chayshish. We're not as strict when it comes to truma, and therefore, if we don't think she's pregnant, she doesn't look pregnant, so we say, okay, she could eat truma. So Gemara says, what are you talking about? A person says, here's your get. 1 moment before I die. So we're strict. We don't know if he's going to die. So we say, you're never allowed to eat truma because this may be the time. So if we see we're strict when it comes to eating truma, so we should say the same thing. We should be chayshish, maybe she's pregnant. So when it comes to nisuin marriage, we're chayshish. Biznus lo chashu. When it comes to znus, we're not chayshish. Says Rashi, Kidikaimalon. So it's very interesting. When it comes to marriage, so there, part of marriage is having a kid. Eventually, maybe you'll have a child together. So therefore, a person may not necessarily use the precautions, and therefore there's a good chance you can get pregnant. And therefore, if you say harzekitech, you're married, so we're chayshish, even though you're about to get divorced. Nonetheless, you're married, so therefore we're chayshish. However, when it comes to this situation where it's znus, a woman is more careful when it comes to znus. This is not a life partner, and therefore there's a stronger chance that she's going to take precautions to not get pregnant, and therefore not going to be concerned that maybe she's pregnant. So again, if she's pregnant, she can't eat truma. If we think she may be pregnant, we don't want her to eat truma. But there's no reason to think that if it's nus, it was shelo shem ishus. Okay, Uvenesuin mi chashashu. So again, you're telling me in marriage, are we concerned that maybe she's pregnant? Vosanya bas kain shnisa Yisrael. You have a bas kain, and she's married straight out to Yisrael. So now she cannot eat truma because she's a bas Yisrael. Umes. And then all of a sudden her husband dies. And it says Rashi, Umes balo boy biyoim. So tovelos veichelos betrumul erev. So she's allowed to immerse herself because of the bia that she had with him. And then she's allowed to eat truma afterwards. So the question is, why would we allow her to eat truma? Okay, she's a bas kohen, so she goes back to her father's house. But the problem is, I thought we just said that when it comes to the suin, we're chayshish that maybe she may be pregnant. So the Gemara says like this: Amar Rav Chisda toivelos v'chilos ad arboim. So she will toivel and eat ad arboim until 40 days. Now the iulo mi'abra, if not for the fact that she's pregnant, haloi mi'abra, v'im mi'abra ad arboim mai ba'almahi. So we say that up until the 40 days, it's just like liquid. So let's say you recognize that she's pregnant, so we say it's mekukal backwards, says Rashi. Truma keren v'chaimish. So in that situation, she would, whoever ate this truma, would have to pay the principal of what they ate, as well as an additional fifth. The shtakach, says Rashi, the zara havoy. Turns out that she is a zar. That's what ends up happening, right? If in fact we see that she's pregnant, so therefore she's linked to this non-kayin. The achot truma b'shaygeg. She ate truma b'shaygeg. Now the ikid ka'amrit, like we were saying before, maimakul kelas havadi kol mem lav zar havoy. So we say in the first 40 days, she's not considered to be a zar. So then, what's the whole issue? Gemara says, "Ma'makol kalas ad arboim." Says Rashi, ad arboim. Im achlal acher mem. If she ate after the 40 days, te'makol kalas l'mafreya ad yoim arboim. Okay, says the Gemara. Ma'makol kalas ad arboim. Itmar habali arusasai. A woman. So a person has tashmish with an orus, an engaged woman. Bebeis chamav. So they were engaged in an inappropriate relationship. He had tashmish with his orus. It was bebeis chamav. Rabbi Omer havlad mamzer. So they say that this child is actually going to be a mamzer. Says Rashi, Avol pi sheshneim moedim shabolah. Even though they both admit this, what happened? Chayshishin hayil uprutzehi. We see that once she's already engaged in this type of a relationship, achar nami boleha. It's possible that she actually had tashmish with other men as well. Once we see that this is a pattern of her behavior, of inappropriate behavior, so then we suspect that it may be from another husband, another man. Shmuel Eimer Havlad Shtuki, which is a suffix mamzer. We don't know for sure, so we call it a suffix. A Shtuki, we don't know who the father is. Omer Rava Mistabra Milsid Rav. It makes sense when Rav says the child's a mamzer is the dami mi'alma, is when there's suspicion and rumors that are coming from elsewhere. So it's Rashi shechashuda me'acheirim, right? Avol dami mi'alma. If let's say there's no other rumors, basur didei shadin lei. We're going to probably say it was this man, the one who is the Baal. So if there's rumors, then we should be suspicious of those rumors. Maybe the child's a mamzer. We'll call him mamzer. However, there's no reason to suspect, then we should assume that the child comes from this man. So how do I know this? Dekatani Yolda Teichel. It says that the kohen who is mafata and gives birth, it says to a child Teichel, she can eat truma. Now, if let's say again there's rumors about this woman being with other men, so Yolda my Teichel, the fact that she has a child, why she should be able to eat? Maybe it's another man's child. Now, la mine diyama. So it means that it's not that there's rumors that are suspect from elsewhere. So ma hasam dilahai isura basur didesha didn't we still say it's the kayans. So hacha dilahai isura lahai hatera. Over here, the one man is usher and the man she's engaged to is mutter, lo kol shekain, then certainly we should go basta the husband. So whenever there's a rumor, so my time there minan mid afkri national gabi orus. Since she was mafka herself by the orus, afkri national alma. It's possible that she may have been mafka herself to others. And we're talking in our Mishnah a situation where they're both locked up in a cell. So the question is why to assume it's him and no one else is because they were together. So it could have only been them. If they had bia together, we assume it's the man's, this engaged man. We're not going to assume it's a mom's. Arusa, if she's pregnant, she'ibra. Arusa, an engaged woman who's pregnant. Rabbi Omer Havlad Mamzer, Shmuel Omer Havlad Shtuki. So Rabbi Mistaber Mil say to Rav. When does Rav say the child is a mamzer? Doloi daima mine v'daima alma. When there's more suspicion, there's greater suspicion that there's someone else, to the one she's not engaged with. Aval, as we continue, daf ayin daima mine. If let's say the suspicion is just as strong, avla daima alma, bastu didei shadin lay. We're going to say that the child is not a mamzer. Go after the man. Rabba, menan mila de tani, because it says a kohen who is mafate yolda and has a child teichos. Of course she could eat. Why would you not say that? Elav de dami nami me alma uma hasam do hayisura bastard deisha din lay. So hach over here do hayisura hayatera lo kol shekain. Soon will say it is okay. Our Mishnah is a case where there's no rumors at all. That's when we will assume it's the husband's. Okay. Stop here. Let's see a bunch of questions. Question 12. Bas Kohen Shenises Yisrael. So you have a Bas Kohen who married Israel. Now, normally, Umes, now she died. So, Toivelos vechelos b'truma l'erev. We say that she could eat truma immediately, right? And apparently, we're not concerned that she's pregnant. Whereas, my sricha tefila. So, question 12 is, why do you need tefila? So, on this, Rashi says, Toivelos mishum bia. And why are we not chayshish that she's pregnant and therefore she should not be able to eat truma? So, my answer is, again, Toivelos mishum bia, but Chelos betruma, she can eat truma ad mem yoim until 40 days. The afil ibra, even if she's pregnant, mai ba'almahi. We say it's just like mayim ba'alma. So after 40 days, in which it's actually a child, we know it's hook or uber, then she can no longer eat truma. However, the first 40 days, it's maya ba'alma. Okay, and that's the reason why they say you can eat truma. Question 13. Rachel Bas Kohen. You have a woman who's a Bas Kohen. Shenises Yisrael. She was married to a non-Kohen. V'nod Leah umeis Bala. And she gave birth to Leah umeis Bala, and her husband died. So her husband died, and she has a daughter. And the daughter is from Israel, so the child is Israel. Nises Leah Kohen, and then she marries a Kohen. V'hoy lehem ben. And she has a child. So the grandchild is a kohen. Umeis bala. Ha'im rachel v'leah chelos b'truma b'chaya ben. So who's allowed to eat in this situation? So in this case, Leah, her son, she married a kohen, so she could eat truma. However, Rachel eno achelos. Rachel, again, who is a bas kohen, since she was married to Leah and her husband died, it's actually just pashut, right? If her husband died and she was a bas kohen, but since she has a grandchild, so therefore that will be enough that she's still linked to the Yisrael, and therefore she cannot eat truma. Okay. However, in the situation in a situation where the next child is a kohen, so therefore that will be enough that she will now be able to eat truma. So even though the daughter's a Yisrael, but since her son, because she married a kohen, so her son is a kohen, and therefore she could eat truma. However, the grandmother who was married to a Yisrael and she had a child, so since she had a child who's the Yisrael, she can't eat truma. That's it. Okay, so I'm not sure. It's interesting that the question was even asked. It just seems like a partial question. Okay, question 13. Menon de zera Michael betruma. Okay, we didn't do this, but the answer is going to be b'nei banim harim kabanim. It's going to be somewhere. Okay, TB 23. Bas kohen sheni seis l'Yisrael. So you have a bas kohen, and she marries a Yisrael, umeis, and her husband dies. V'acha v'truma, so she's allowed to eat truma. Acha misasa v'nimsas muberes, but it turns out she's pregnant. Now hi'im oleha l'shalin mamafreya keren v'chaimish. Since she's pregnant, do we now have to say that the truma that she ate, does she have to pay the keren v'chaimish al truma she'acha v'shaygig, on the truma that she ate b'shaygig? So on this, the Gemara said, Sricha Shalom ad arboim yoim. She needs to pay up until the 40 days. The tzir savlad, the ein hazman hahu paisla. Because of the tzir savlad, ein hazman hahu paisla. That time will not passel her. So she needs to pay only up until ad or arboim yoim. Ad kan.